All right, so President Trump made a stunning appearance on Capitol Hill. Marco Rubio gets into a heated exchange with Senator Van Hollen. And after getting federally charged by the DOJ, Congresswoman McIver is on CNN claiming to be a victim.
How important is it to have this piece of legislation for your agenda and your legacy?
It's very important. It's important for the country. It's not important for me. It's important for the country. This is the greatest bill that will ever, I think it's the most important bill this country just about has ever done in terms of size and scope. That's why we call it the great, big, beautiful deal. I mean, it really is. The bill is, I think it's going to be one of the most important. It's the biggest tax reduction in history, biggest regulation reduction in history. Incredible for Medicaid, for Medicare. The only thing, we're going to leave it exactly as it was, other than for obviously waste, fraud, and abuse. We're strengthening it. We're going to make these things even stronger. The Democrats are going to destroy Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And we're going to keep them, but even make them stronger.
Okay, so that was President Trump this morning on Capitol Hill meeting with House Republicans for what? He wants to make sure that big, beautiful bill gets out of the House and into the Senate. So he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. But what's interesting about this entire story is the difference between people who want tax cuts in America and the people who are losing sleep over the deficit. And what's interesting, if you were to walk down the street and ask the average American, what do you care more about, getting tax cuts or reducing the deficit? I think you know what the answer might be. And also, I believe CNN confirmed that this morning as well. Take a listen.
Cut taxes, even if the deficit increases. Look at this. 60% overall say, cut those taxes, baby. What about Republicans? You know, they're the ones who are supposedly so concerned over the deficit. But even there, 74% say cut taxes, even if the deficit increases. Both overall and Republicans, they don't care. They don't care. In fact, the only ones who do seem to care are, in fact, Democrats. 55% of Democrats are opposed to cutting taxes if the deficit increases. But when it comes to Republicans, we're talking 3/4. The overall public, 3/5. They don't care. They say cut those taxes, even if the deficit increases.
Yeah, so let's understand why those numbers are what they are. Just on a simple, basic level, the average American knows exactly how it feels to get a tax cut and how that benefits their life every day. What they don't understand is how the deficit impacts their life every day. And this is why President Trump is on Capitol Hill making sure that bill gets out of the House and onto the Senate. But more importantly, he's going to face resistance from people like Rand Paul and Thomas Massie because they are more concerned with the deficit and they're standing on principle. But the problem with that thinking is the average American does not relate to that. They relate to tax cuts, especially when you factor in the last 4 years of record inflation. Now, to show you how long this trend has been going where Americans could care less about the deficit, take a look at this clip.
Okay, cut taxes even if the deficit increases. Now, you know, it's that 60% we spoke about. But back in 1996, the real last time where there really was a movement to bring that deficit down, bring that debt down, it was just 23% who said cut taxes even if the deficit increases. So we've nearly seen a tripling, far more than doubling of the percentage of Americans who say that we should cut those taxes even if the deficit increases. And that's where we're standing right now, basically, amongst the American public. And why I think that this movement to basically try and, you know, close down Trump's big, beautiful bill by making the argument that the deficit would increase, why will basically probably go nowhere at the end of the day, because the bottom line is voters overall and Republican voters especially say we want to cut those taxes even if the deficit increases, which is far, far different from where we were back in 1996 when, of course, Bill Clinton was president and we had a Republican House and a Republican Senate really trying to bring that deficit down.
Yeah, so the reality when it comes to Congress is they do not have the public support. In fact, the public supports President Trump more than congressional members, especially Republicans. And also trying to make the argument all about the deficit, that isn't going to land. I just explained to you why. Most people don't even understand the deficit. They don't even know how it impacts their daily life, but they definitely know how taxes do. And so this takes us to our next story here. This is about Congresswoman McIver, who I told you guys last night was brought up on charges by the Department of Justice officially. They are taking her to court, and President Trump did have something to say about that. Take a listen.
Democratic Congresswoman.
Oh, give me a break. Did you see her? She was out of control.
Did you address
You know, those days are over.
Did
The
you
days
tell her
of
to do
woke.
that?
The days of woke. No, I didn't. The days of woke are over. That woman, I have no idea who she is. That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver is expected to be in court. She's there in the red shirt as investigators say she was shoving and throwing elbows at federal agents. According to court documents, Martha, she grabbed an agent and tried to restrain him, and then she pushed another agent, striking him with her forearm. She's looking at several felony charges, including assault, impeding, and interfering with law enforcement, and could face time behind bars, we're told.
So as it pertains to this congresswoman, she's out of line, okay? I'm not saying they're not allowed to go down to an ICE detention center because they have made the law say that they can. And they could definitely do a walkthrough and inspect and do their oversight duties. Nobody's disputing that. My issue is, why are you caught up in pushing and shoving an ICE officer? There's no excuse for that. Now, I would understand if it was a teenager out there doing that. I get it. But you're a grown woman pushing and shoving an ICE officer. I don't understand where she's going with all that. But she tries to make an excuse for it because, remember, Democrats are the victims. That's why on CNN this morning, she said this.
The charge is specifically for assaulting, impeding, or interfering with law enforcement. What is your reaction to this charge?
First of all, thank you so much, Kate, for having me, or allowing me to come on for a few seconds today. I think the charges are absurd. You know, it's ridiculous. I was there to do my job along with my other colleagues. We have done this before. This is our obligation to do. It's in our job description to have oversight over a facility, and the entire situation was escalated by ICE. They caused the confrontation. Homeland came and, caused this chaos that we see. It was a very tense situation, but it could have been, easily not happened. They had every opportunity to not allow this to happen. It was very unnecessary. And it just, once again, we were there to do our jobs. And, if I'm going to be charged with a crime for doing my job, it just speaks to, where we're headed in this country and what we're dealing with as leaders and as Congress members, here in this country.
See, people like this is why I don't like politics. Because right now what she's doing on CNN is playing a victim. She's trying to present herself as a professional. She's staying calm. You see her tone has completely changed. I just want to know, where's the same energy you had, Congresswoman, back in February when you were cursing up a storm and screaming? You guys don't remember what she said? Take a look.
We will not take this. We will fight back. Fight back. Fight back. And as I close out, because I know we've been out here for a long time, and goddamn it, shut down the Senate. We are at war.
Hey, that's who she is right there, okay? That's who she is, not the woman you see on CNN there. She's the one that was saying that this is a war, that they're not going to back down, that she went down to the ICE facility and pushed and shoved an ICE officer. That's who she is. But we'll see what happens in court because, again, I'm not convinced she'll actually be sent to prison. Now, she also had this to say, calmly. Take a look.
Having time and space to think about what happened on that day and reflect on it, would you have done anything differently?
No, I would not have. Once again, we showed up there to do a job, Kate. We were there for an oversight visit. We have done this before. Me, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman, and Congressman Bob Menendez was just at a facility just a couple of weeks ago, not too far from this location, where we had an oversight visit, and we were a little bit delayed, but not, confronted or was in the middle of a chaos to do so.
Okay, now before I play you the clip from CCP Swalwell, who comes to her defense, let's hear this message from today's sponsor. I want to do a personal shout out to today's sponsor, Aura. Because when I signed up, little did I know my personal information was being sold on the dark web. I'm talking my full name, email address, even parts of my social security number. This was a wake-up call. But here's the good part about Aura. They didn't just find it. They actually walked me through how to remove it and lock things down. Since then, I've had fewer spam calls, no weird charges, and peace of mind knowing that they're monitoring my information 24/7. And they can even track your credit, watch your bank accounts, and protect your social security number and home title, and even help keep your kids safe online with parental controls. It's been powerful for my family, and I know it will help yours too. So if you want to do this for yourself, use my link, aura.com/Javori, so you can get 14-day free trial to see it for yourself, or you can hit the link in the description below.
Typically, we would be able to give them notice when we visit a facility, and the law says you don't have to give them notice. But they're not worthy of much of a heads up because of the amount of lies that they've told the American people and the amount of lies that they've been called out on by judges across the country. And so we have to do our oversight duties, and she was in the right to go and do that. And I promise you, there's going to be more unnoticed visits by my colleagues where they show up and they better be let in.
Yeah, tell me you're not tough without telling me that you're not tough. I know that's a double negative, but just work with me here, guys. That is a ridiculous statement from CCP Swalwell is what we're going to start calling him. These guys, they're not going to do anything. He wants you to believe that federal officers are not worthy of respect from congressional members. Just imagine that for a second. The people who create the laws don't respect the people who are enforcing the law. I find that to be fascinating. Now, circling back to President Trump, when he was speaking to reporters on Capitol Hill, they asked him about this rumor that was going around that he is losing patience with House Republicans on this bill. And here's what he said.
You told him you were losing patience. Are you losing patience? No, I didn't tell him. Who told you I said I'm losing patience? That's what we heard inside the room. You said it's a lie. Wait a minute. Who's told you that?
What we heard from people inside the room.
Oh, really? It's totally true. I never used the term. I didn't say losing. I didn't even talk about it. In fact, it's the opposite. I think we're going to get it done. I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule. Anybody that told you that is a liar. Wait a minute. I never mentioned the word losing patience because I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule.
That's why I asked you. I want to get
well, why don't you go back to your source and tell them they're liars if the source even exists?
Yeah, it's a good point. Does the source even exist? Most of the time it doesn't. That's why they use the term anonymous sources, okay? Now, I remember when I went to college, that was never going to cut it if you wrote an essay, anonymous sources. You better name who they are. But that's a whole nother thing. Now, let's go to our next story. This is about Marco Rubio, okay? Secretary of State made an appearance on Capitol Hill this morning to discuss the budget for FY26. And you guessed it, this entire hearing wasn't even about the budget. You know who it was about? Mr. Garcia, the Maryland man who was deported back to El Salvador. And there was a heated exchange between Rubio and Senator Van Hollen, the congressman who's in love with Mr. Garcia, for the record. And I think you're going to find some enjoyment in this. Let's start here, where he's trying to remind Rubio of what the law is according to the Supreme Court. And I don't believe it went his way. Take a listen.
The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, instructed you to facilitate the return to the United States of Abrego Garcia, who the administration admitted was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Your response? You've openly flouted judicial orders. When asked whether you have been in touch with El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, you boasted, quote, "I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would never tell? A judge." Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may, sir.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant statement, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask.
Senator, please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his.
Your time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well,
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr.
Secretary,
Chairman,
please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation.
Okay, so there's so much more that Marco Rubio had to say, and I'll play you that here shortly, which I think is worthy of the watch. But in regards to the Supreme Court ruling, any person with a brain understands that when the Supreme Court said that the Trump administration must facilitate the return of Mr. Garcia, that means they should assist the return. That doesn't mean they have to trigger the return. And the only person who can trigger the return is who? The president of El Salvador. See, they always leave this out, right? Because they have a narrative to push. All right. So let's get to what Marco Rubio had to say, because I think he really just ends this entire stupid debate with Senator Van Hollen. He says this. Take a listen.
Days to come,
Mr.
you're
Chairman,
gonna see who you went to
look,
defend.
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary
No.
Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments
Senator,
like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You
Secretary
had your
Rubio
time.
should take that testimony to the federal court in the
Senator,
United States because
Well,
he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them we've had communications with the president of El Salvador, I am under no obligation under our division of powers in this country and to share with the judicial branch how I conducted diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive.
Yep, it sure would. And this is exactly what Democrats would be saying if they were sitting in that same seat as Marco Rubio. Now, let's go to this next story because Marco Rubio also spoke on this. Students that are getting their visas revoked. Well, according to Senator Van Hollen, Marco Rubio is a tyrant. He's breaking the law and violating the Constitution. Now, before I show you what Marco Rubio had to say, let's hear this story that just came out during the hearing at Columbia University. Take a listen.
So the acting president of Columbia University enduring a chorus of boos after taking the stage for a commencement address today. Here is what happened when Claire Shipman tried to begin speaking at Columbia College, the university's liberal arts school.
Good morning, class of 2025. I know that many of you feel some amount of frustration with me, and I know you feel it with the administration.
Some attendees also voicing frustrations over the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, the student protest leader who was detained by immigration agents earlier this year. They're screaming "Free Mahmoud" there. This outcry at Columbia also comes just days after police arrested a group of protesters who stormed a school library before finals. CNN reached out to the university for comment, but has not received a response yet.
Okay, I don't think you're shocked by that reaction because students at these universities, I'm telling you, they are woke as you can get. And it's just unfortunate what they're being taught, and it's unfortunate what they're wasting their energy on. They're out there booing the acting president in the name of Mr. Khalil, the guy who supports a group and participated in a group that is called for the end of Western civilization as we know it. Okay, so I'm not too sure what's going on over there, but it's not good. Now, let me show you another angle of this taking place.
Claire Shipman.
Thank you. Good morning, class of 2025. I know that many of you feel
That's just tough day for her, right? Now let's get back to Marco Rubio because again, according to Senator Van Hollen, he's been breaking the law, violating the Constitution, snatching up students in the middle of the night. You know the type of language they like to use to get people's attention and you know, tug on their heartstrings. And once again, here's Marco Rubio setting the senator straight. Take a listen.
About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas. And it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ostork did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come
that,
on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single
You're
one of
just
these
blowing
cases, the
smoke
factors
here
are
now.
different.
Senator,
the bottom line is, if you're
Senator,
coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you
Does
have
the
a
First
visa
Amendment
and we
apply
find you,
to
we will
people
revoke
living in
it.
the United
And
States?
we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a
Writing an
bunch of
op-ed
lunatics
to the
who are
top
here on
newspapers
student visas.
disrupting the
Simple
foreign
as
policy of the
that.
United
I want to
States.
do
Yeah, so Marco Rubio is not wrong. I mean, if you're going to the university, you shouldn't be going to protest the United States of America. You should be going to get an education. You saw the clips that CNN showed right there on the screen. They shut down a library trying to protest Israel. What is going on? Now, I get people have a right to say what they want. I'm not disputing that. But you don't have a right to shut down parts of a college or a university and prevent students from getting the education that either they took out a loan for and taxpayers are ultimately have to pay for, or what their parents are paying for. Let's get real here. But they don't ever want to discuss that point, okay? Now, let's actually get your reaction, because I know we discuss a lot in this video. Let's start with President Trump making an appearance on Capitol Hill. You know why he went there, because he's got to hold these House Republicans to account. They need to get this job done. Also, what do you think about the Congresswoman playing victim on CNN this morning? And then lastly, what's your response to Marco Rubio and the way he had to testify in front of the Senate this morning? Let me know your thoughts about all of that in the comment section below. Now, last night's story was breaking news, where the Department of Justice has officially filed charges against Congresswoman MacIver for assaulting an ICE officer. If you missed out on the details and that announcement, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.